Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. This is Lex Gingerella with Recruiting Daily, and welcome back to the educational webinar series. We're very excited today to have you here to talk about text recruiting etiquette with someone in the field that I think you guys are going to be really happy to talk to. But first, let's go over a few housekeeping things per usual. You are in listen only mode, and we are recording, so you can hear us, we can't hear you, but everything is being recorded. So if you miss something or you have to step away for a second, don't worry. We will have a recording of this up on our website within 24 hours, along with a copy of the presentation. So no worries there. Special thanks to our sponsor today is Text Recruit. Once you download the presentation, there's a nice link here. You can go and get a demo and check out and see what they're all about. And we're going to talk about how awesome they are today with our special guest coming up. And here he is, none other than the famous Jared Bazzell from CDW. We've had Jared on in the past. He's really, really great. He knows his stuff. So I'm going to hand it over to him to say hello, say a little bit about CDW, and then he and Ryan Leary are also going to be in the background talking about some text recruiting things. And again, if you didn't happen to see in the agenda, please ask questions. On your control panel, you'll see a little area to raise your hand. Put in some Q&A. We are going to be answering these questions live, so join in with us, have some fun, and I'm going to throw it to Jared and Ryan. We'll go ahead and get started.
Fantastic.
Thanks,
Thank you, Lex. Yep, thank you very much, Lex. So again, welcome everybody. I'm not going to talk too much. This is Ryan. The expert today is Jared. And if you don't know Jared, I don't want to embarrass you here, but I just want to give, I know Jared's pretty humble, but I want to give a brief overview of why we have Jared presenting today. Jared has done this real time. He has done it across a major organization. He's researched this topic. He's lived it. He's integrated, implemented it, and has seen an amazing return. Texting is not new. We'll get into all of that, of course. But we have a lot of people on the call today, Jared, that are varying levels. Some have implemented text recruiting. Some have not. Some are just starting that journey. And we actually have questions coming in already, and we do have some questions that came in prior to the webinar that I'm going to poke through and get to you as well. But I just wanted to give you that brief intro there. And let's, Jared, if you want to just kind of run through what you do, how you do it, and then we also have those polls. So when you're ready for those polls, let me know, and we'll get those out there as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Jared Bazzell, I'm happy to be here today to share some insight about CDW's talent acquisition process and how we've used text recruit or texting in our recruiting process to really drive efficiency and productivity across the team. For those who aren't familiar with CDW, we are a Fortune 200 technology solutions provider. We recruit for all different levels, all different types of roles. As you can imagine, for a growing, Fortune 200 company, CDW as a whole has approximately, 8,800 coworkers worldwide. We do have a global presence in countries throughout the world, and really, achieved over $15 billion in revenue for 2017. As we continue to grow, we've faced the problem, and I'm sure that all of you as talent acquisition leaders and practitioners have as well. Your TA budget isn't necessarily growing every year, and finding areas for optimization, increases in productivity have been essential for CDW to continue to meet the demands and growth really. Text recruiting is one of those methods that we've deployed at CDW to really hit home. Ryan. So I think we want to run through a brief agenda today with what we want to go through here. First, email, the transition from email to texting for CW has been really a huge one, and we've seen great lifts in productivity. How do we communicate at scale with texting? Different methods, whether it's a campaign, whether it's one-on-one, how it impacts our candidate engagement and overall our recruiting life cycle at CDW, and really, close with questions that you might have for myself, Ryan, or anybody here that we can potentially help you with. And how do you use texting to optimize your process? So with that, what I will tell you is that email spam rates, it's getting worse and worse. And, there's not a day that goes by I don't get 100 spam emails or 100 shopping emails in my, personal email box. So how do you stay relevant? How do you stay fresh? And that was the central question, right? So when we were looking at alternate methods for communication, whether it was, we wanted to communicate with our candidates how they're communicating. And, texting was a natural fit for us is what we found. The demographic that we were recruiting for, what we thought when we first started texting is that, it would transpond with our entry level roles or more junior roles. But what we found is texting really transforms generations. And it doesn't matter whether you're a senior professional in your career or whether you're in entry level, going into an entry level role within your organization. Texting has done tremendous things to really speed up communication back and forth, scheduling interviews. And so the traditional wait and see what happens with an email is no more.
Hey, Jared, we have some questions coming in. Do you want to take those now on email, or do you want
Sure.
to? All right. So
Sure.
First question, and this might be kind of a shock jock type of moment. Email is dead. That is a bold statement. It's been the line of communications for a very long time. Is that a statement to turn heads, or is this the real deal for you?
So don't get me wrong. We still use email as communication. We want to communicate with our candidates how they want to be communicated with. So offering them options is everything, I will tell you. And, what we are finding is more and more of our candidates are opting in and choosing to be communicating with us via text messaging. And I will tell you, people have been using text messaging in the recruiting process where, I'm just going to send you a link and you can click it and then you can respond. But two-way dynamic communication via texting is something that has really taken off the last couple of years. And that's where the differentiator is in the recruiting process. How can you have real-time back and forth communication with a candidate, right? For CDW, being first to that candidate is everything, right? We want to, be right there. We want to be, the first to reach out to them. We want to be highly engaging with our candidates and a very high touch process. And texting helps us accomplish that mission.
Good, fantastic. And let me see what else we have coming in for emails. We're getting some comments to just say they're still seeing a lot of success with email. I know that can go either way. This is just another means of communication. There's a question.
Here's what I would say though.
Yeah.
What is your open rate on an email message, right? Versus what is your open rate on a text message? And, if your open rate's 25%, 30% for recruiting, on average, that's great. But can you beat 99% with a text? Everybody has a cell phone these days that's text enabled for a large majority of the population. We're going to get into some statistics here about, what is the growth rate of texting and adoption later. But, what I would challenge you is look at what your current open rates of your email campaigns that you're running are, and how does that potentially look compared to some of the alternate channels?
Yep. And I'm going to just jump in real quick. Lex, I'm going to need your help here with some of the questions to start grabbing them. So, Jared, we're on slide 1 and we're getting questions that I can't keep up with. So this is a very popular topic. Good. Yeah, that's really good. So, Lex, I'm just going to have to call some help and wave the flag here. I need some help here. So, Jared, do you want to?
I have you guys. So somebody did make mention that they don't think email actually is dead per se, kind of like you were saying. It's still not dead. They get a lot of emails, over 100 a day, and eventually they put them into this folder, and then your email learns from that and starts separating, and you kind of, so email isn't totally dead for everybody, but a lot of people are jumping in. They want to know a lot about the opt-in, opt-out process and setting boundaries with your candidates.
Yeah. So, of course, your texting solution needs to be able to manage your do not text list, right? You can set up things like, hey, if the candidate wants to unsubscribe from text messages, simply saying, hey, stop sending me text messages, and that meets the compliance perspectives. So from a compliance perspective at CDW, we believe we are more than compliant with regards to that. Our candidates are opting in as, with regards to when they complete their application at CDW, with regards to our texting process. And again, this is all about offering options, right? Not everybody will get a text message. If they don't want a text message, then they don't have to get one. And I think that's the central message at CDW. If you want to communicate via email, or if you want to communicate via phone with your recruiter, which, we value high touch, high interaction. We would love to call every one of our candidates, but getting essentially the voicemail, and then having to have them call back, then setting up a time. Whereas with texting, we're able to right away set up that time that's good for the candidate and reach out and talk with them.
Yeah. And Jared, just to let you know, I launched the poll just a second ago. The first poll, how many text messages did you send yesterday? So we're waiting for that to come through. And once that's through, I'll come back and I'll read those results for you there.
I have another question that came in while everybody's answering the poll. What are your thoughts, processes on texting cold candidates? Are these warm leads that you've already talked to, or do you guys reach out en masse to cold, quote unquote, cold candidates as well?
We don't engage cold candidates. People that are engaged via texting at CDW are all people that are either in our CRM or our ATS, have explicitly expressed interest and opted in to be texted. At CDW, I am familiar with some platforms that enable you to, procure people who have opted in to text campaigns. But that's just not something that we do at the current time at CDW. Our focus has been more around candidate engagement versus using it as a sourcing tool.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we've got some poll results, and let's go through them. I'll go through real quick. I'm not going to pop them up on the screen because it'll cut the viewing off here. But we've got 13% said none. I don't text at all. 42% less than 10, 35 between 11 and 50, 6% between 51 and 100, and 3% said more than 100.
So all over the place, right? I think, that's what you're going to find is, it's truly, it's truly all over the place, but it is growing more and more as time and as adoption and as our phones, the growth of iPhones and Androids, is making texting more mainstream and easier and easier.
Sure. Now, so Jared, there's a handful of questions on this, and so let me just kind of summarize them, and maybe we could just talk to that into these questions here. So there's no short of probably a few thousand products on the market today that claim, to close gaps and inefficiencies and make things more efficient. Some are in recruiting, some are outside of recruiting. How did you identify those gaps in your process, and how did you decide texting is where you wanted to go to help close those gaps?
Yeah, we were already texting our candidates, right? So, I think we viewed it as this is an opportunity for us to, one, kind of reel it in, right? Rather than, every one of our recruiters has a company iPhone or a company phone. And so this is an opportunity for us to make it trackable, reportable, use templates, right? And standardize it across our process. And so that's how we viewed texting, right? We already had recruiters who were doing it today. And this was purely an opportunity for us to, scale it across the organization and introduce it into areas where we never thought it was possible. If you interview for a role at CDW and, you are coming on site for an interview with the hiring manager, automatically, when we schedule that interview within our ATS, we're queuing up a message to be sent, 24 hours beforehand that will essentially remind the candidate, hey, you have an interview scheduled tomorrow. Here's driving directions, and here's the time, here's who you're meeting with. If you need to reschedule, text us and let us know. And, that's how we continue to drive the optimization and efficiency.
Okay. And so as people have been reading the slide here on the deck, communicating at scale, I think you've covered a lot of this. I don't think we need to go through all of the bullet points here. It's very clear where it's working, where it potentially is not working. So I just lost the second poll here for everybody. And that so that's seeming to get answered. Let's just see. We're going to give it another probably 10 or 15 seconds, and then we're going to cut it off. So Lex, do you have any other questions on communications right now that we can throw in here as we're doing the poll?
Some people are asking about reimbursement for usage in the workplace. So if your organization has decided to utilize a texting campaign, is this something that you guys are reimbursing people on, or have you run into any issues with using it just maybe within the organization and not so much with sourcing and recruiting?
So I guess is the question reimbursing our candidates, or is the question on reimbursing our recruiters?
This is internal. Yep, for your recruiters.
So, every one of our recruiters has a company provided cell phone. And so, we actually, the nice thing about TextRecruit, however, though, is it runs in a web browser. There's a Chrome extension, it integrates into our ATS. There's an iPhone app. So there's no need to reimburse anybody internally. Everything we're paying essentially a monthly fee, to use the texting product, and that's directly paid by CDW for our recruiters. And then each recruiter has their own license to the tool, and can engage candidates directly.
So Jared, I think we have a wide variety of companies on the call. Some are going to be large enterprise, others are going to be 5-10 person type agencies or companies. Where obviously for the larger companies, they need a solution at scale. Does that same solution, whether it's TextRecruit or something else, there's so many texting solutions that are out there. Does the smaller company, say 1 person to 20 or 1 to 50 in that range, do they need a full solution?
Yes is the question. And I would encourage anybody to, start small. Find people who are going to be your adopters, who are going to, who are going to be advocates for use of texting in the recruiting process. And do a pilot, or go out there and say, you know what, you two are going to champion this and try it out and evaluate the success for our organization, how it fits in the recruiting process. So whether you're big or small, my recommendation is you start at, you don't go out there and try and roll it out to your entire organization all at once, because then you're bound to get people who don't adopt, right? Whereas people can start to see success right from the get-go. Your long-term is, I think it's going to be much better off. That's very similar to how we rolled out texting at CDW. Is we started with a smaller population. They saw amazing results, I will tell you, amazing, really response rates, just collaboration with our candidates. And that spreads like fire and quickly. That's where there's opportunity. When you look at, whether you're a big or small organization, what was really important for us at CDW was, having a record of that communication. When our recruiters were using cell phones to communicate with their candidates, there was no record, there was no standardization, and no integration with our ATS. And that's where we gained the efficiency from a productivity standpoint.
Okay, so we've closed the poll, Jared, and I'll read off the numbers real quick, and then I want to get to the next slide because we've got a whole bunch of questions. I say more than a handful. asking about implementation, verbiage used in the text messaging. What does it truly look like for you? And it just so happens that's on the next run. So let's go through the poll, and then we'll jump into that. So 37% say 18 to 29. What's the fastest growing demographic for texting? 37% 18 to 29. 35% 30 to 49, 23% 50 to 64, and 4% say 65 plus. Where are you at with that?
Sorry, Ryan, what was the question?
Oh, we were going through the poll. Sorry. What is the fastest growing demographic?
Yeah. So the surprising thing here is actually it's what people said is the lowest. The fastest growing demographic right now is actually, really the last two, bands. And I think that's it's tremendous, right? Adoption has already occurred at the 18 to 29 and the 30 to 49. Really, growth of texting continues to transpond generations. And, I hinted at that earlier, and really that's where there's it doesn't matter anymore whether the person's an entry level person or if they're more senior in their career, is what we found at CDW.
Gotcha. Okay, good. So let's go through some of the do's and don'ts. And the slide that I wanted to show is the one with all of the text messages on there. So
before we jump into that, I have a couple people that are specifically asking about templates and what exactly you guys say. Are you guys giving your recruiters free reign on basically what they're saying? Do you guys have scripts and little automated things that you make everyone use and templates as to what they have to say, or is it kind of like a free reign thing?
So we have north of 50 templates across our organization that can be used pretty much at any time in the recruiting process. But we also invite our recruiters to use freeform or, open text, type of environment as well. The templates are there to drive efficiency, right? And a lot of the templates are tied to, different steps in our recruiting process, kind of what we were talking about earlier with, candidates coming in for a hiring manager interview. Well, we are automatically going to, we're automatically going to be able to send out that text message 24 hours beforehand because we've queued it up already that, hey, you've got an interview tomorrow on site at CDW. Here's driving directions. We've pulled your address from Taleo, and, here's our office address. Click here to travel, essentially. For us, it's all about how do we continue to make it easier on our candidates, have them show up on time, right? When your office may not be the easiest to find, you may not have the best access to parking. The small stuff matters, right? Having a candidate show up on time for an interview is essential. And we've really tried to eliminate some of those problems or some of those barriers at CDW throughout our process. Overall, I think a couple huge substantial wins for the organization, productivity, right? As you can see here on the screen, in Q1 2017 alone, the team saved north of 100 hours of recruiter productivity. As we've continued to bring additional people on the organizational coworkers, that number has continued to rise. We've set up now Text Recruit with our RPO coordinator team that is essentially communicating with candidates, but also that communication flows to the recruiter as well. So the recruiter has visibility into the recruiting process. Altogether in 2017, more than 3,700 different candidate communications happened. And I will tell you, that's unique candidate communications. That's, the way that our texting platform measures is every unique phone number, essentially, not every back and forth communication. What I have here in front of you right now is actually some examples of the use of texting in our recruiting process and what it looks like. Essentially, if I was to reply back and forth, you'd be able to see these you'd be able to communicate back and forth with that member, with that coworker, the member of the CDW recruiting team who sent you that, because these are all a unique phone number that's tied to that specific recruiter.
Awesome. And while everybody looks at this, I will just kind of give you a couple pointers. Now, Text Recruit, as far as the platform that's being used for a lot of these text messages, when you sign up for it, you will get a local phone number. So it's not going to look like spam to a lot of your candidates that you are sourcing locally. For instance, I am initially from the Pittsburgh area, and so when I signed up for Text Recruit, it gave me a phone number that was local to the area. So when I reach out to candidates and people in the area, it's a local phone number, and it's not some random 800 number that looks like somebody's spamming you. I see a lot of people out here are concerned with spamming their candidates. That helps eliminate a lot of the concern with your candidates. You do get a local number. So there's that. Ryan, what else do you have coming in?
Well, so one thing I will mention is that, a large majority of our recruiting team is located in downtown Chicago, but, our U.S.-based team is recruiting across the country for different roles in different markets. And, not only is a local phone number, but we have the option to get a local Philly number that our recruiter who's recruiting for that market can have. So it appears as if they're actually sitting in the Philly area, right? Versus actually they're in Chicago. And we've seen a direct impact on that with our response rate as well. Very similar to when we call into Philly and we're, a recruiter is calling into Philly, we're calling with their local number. And, we've seen a direct result in the rise of our response rate, candidates, picking up the phone or responding to a text message.
Yeah, and I get those calls all the time, not from you guys, but the robocalls, and they're all local numbers, and it could or couldn't be somebody I know, and I always answer them just because I have to at this point. But so Jared, we've got a lot of questions around process, integration, and how did you make the selection? And so let's chunk that out into a couple of different questions there, I think. So how did you take the steps to vision out, I guess, what your process would look like? And I think in that we can capture a few of these questions with identifying what you don't have to share your secret sauce, but a potential workflow for texting. Where are you using it with candidates? Is it during the recruiting process? If they've opted into your a talent community or a newsletter, are you texting at that point, or is this just for scheduling? And then we've covered the messaging, and then there's a whole lot around adoption, getting your recruiters to be comfortable with this, with texting from a desktop or from a monitor dashboard.
Yeah, for us at CDW, there's not a single area, during the candidate life cycle, the candidate journey, where there's not use of texting in the recruiting process. I will tell you, when we started out, we didn't have all the answers, and you all won't as well. You're going to figure out, based upon your candidate journey, your candidate life cycle, your communication process with candidates, where texting might fit best, right? And we started, as I mentioned earlier, we started small. We simply took a look at, all the different correspondences, all the different, kind of communications, and said, wait, does this make sense for us to be sending this out via text messaging? And, one thing I will tell you that we've done most recent is we've actually worked with our third-party assessment provider, who is now, we're able to send out the candidate assessment that has to be taken, during the recruiting process, right after the application. We now send that link out via text messaging in addition to via email. The testing platform is designed for mobile. It is, while it's a great experience on the computer, it's actually, I think, a better experience even on the phone, and what people have been able to do with mobile websites and, a mobile first experience. And so we are super excited about that. We believe will create a direct rise in the completion rate of our assessment, and, continue to positively impact our recruiting process at CDW.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there, Jared. Assessments are One of the biggest areas I think that we, at least here at Recruiting Daily, we get pushback on a lot, whether it's through when we work with clients and any number of areas around consulting, is where do we use assessments? My candidates are not completing them in time. It takes them 4 or 5 days to complete them as opposed to 2 days, and I need to move faster than that. And what you're saying is that by leveraging texting or with your third party, with your assessment provider, leveraging the text recruiting process with the assessment, that's slicing that time down.
Correct. And the nice thing about it is it's actually the same person who will be their recruiter. So if the candidate responds to that message and says, hey, I'm not able to take this assessment right now, but I'll be able to take it back, that message is going back to the recruiter. And so, again, that's the nice thing is that phone number throughout the process, no matter, where it's set in the process, it's all flowing back to the recruiter who is on that requisition.
Okay. And is this all integrated into your ATS?
Yes.
Okay. So you're able to use a text recruit platform. It syncs out with an ATS, syncs with your assessment provider. So it's just an easy workflow for your recruiter to use, one point of use, for example.
Correct. And the nice thing about it is, let's say there's a candidate who's applied to multiple roles within the organization, and Susie is recruiting on one requisition and Jared's recruiting on another requisition. I can see Susie's correspondence back and forth with the candidate. And I can say, oh, this candidate has, already been talking in the recruiting process. They're more interested in this role than they are in my role. And so, I have complete visibility across the team as a recruiter into the correspondence and the back and forth.
That's interesting. Now we're getting, I guess you must have triggered something. We're getting a lot of questions around reporting with this. I guess with the completion and the slicing, time, on a response time and things like that. Let me pick a couple of these. Are you okay with doing some questions on reporting?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's see. Let me pull some of these up here. I'll tell you, before we do that, let's close this loop out with this question here. If the candidate opts in, say 3 months ago, and now you have a new position, are you able to text, or does that opt-in time expire?
So can you repeat the question one more time? I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Yeah, if the candidate opts in 3 months ago, and now you have an open position, are you able to text them, or does that opt-in time expire?
The opt-in time does expire, but as per our kind of terms and conditions and privacy policy, we follow 1 year.
Gotcha. Okay. What is the expiration? I didn't realize that it actually expires, the opt-in there for texting.
That is a CDW internal practice, right? On the freshness of our CRM and just how we continue to making sure that our candidates are relevant, and our engagement process kind of dictates that.
Gotcha. Okay, good. And some of these questions are getting pretty detailed. I'm not sure if you have these answers off the top of your head. Have you run any analysis on demographics where this is more successful? For example, New York, Boston, California, or does that matter?
We've seen very little, differences in our different markets across the U.S. From New York City to Phoenix, Arizona, to Dallas, Texas, to Tampa, Florida, to Chicago. Really, we've used it coast to coast and in all different sizes of cities. There's been no variation there, I'll tell you.
Gotcha. Okay. Fantastic. So let me see where we're at with questions here. Lex, are there any questions that I'm missing? We're coming down to the time here on the webinar.
Yeah, a lot of people want to know what ATS CDW uses.
Oh.
Yeah, we're Taleo Enterprise. Our front end is actually telemetry. So if a candidate applies, they actually don't ever see Taleo. The Twilio experience has been replaced by a front-end application process that pushes it on the back end. Telemetry hosts our career site as well, and
Gotcha.
our CRM.
Okay, and there is a question on the on using Text Recruit. I know we don't want to make it a commercial for Text Recruit, but do you run your texting program through Text Recruit, or is that integrated directly into the ATS?
So Text Recruit is integrated into our ATS throughout the recruiting process. But we also do have our recruiters who will use it directly via the website or via the iPhone app or the Android app. We've really tried to provide our recruiters with as much kind of free reign as possible there. It's not been our goal to say, hey, you got to do it this way. Or I should say, that's not been the way that we've gone about it, right? Every recruiter does things differently, and they have to figure out what works for them, right? We've tried and we've been successful with, hey, here's a whole bunch of templates that are meant to help you, meant to kind of give you a head start. But we've really enabled our recruiters, and I think that's, a unique thing about the CDW recruiting process as a whole. We've enabled our recruiters we've empowered them to make those decisions. How are they going to use it? How are they going to recruit?
Right. Now we've got a lot of questions around etiquette, texting and etiquette, which I know can be defined in many different ways since we've spoken about this. So let me prompt this with a couple of questions that are coming in, and then if you could share your thoughts on etiquette around texting in general, what you're focusing on there at CDW, and maybe the do's and the don'ts. That's a lot there. So if you need me to repeat any of that, I can. Let me prompt you with this question though. How many max text messages should be sent to a candidate, and how often can a text be sent without antagonizing or annoying the recipient?
Well, one thing I think that we've kind of been strategic about is how do we use our text messages to start a conversation, right? Ask a question, wait for the candidate to respond, and then invite a conversation back and forth. Don't get me wrong, there are communications where it's simply, hey, this is information for you. This is the next step in our process, and it's not meant to invoke a response for a candidate. But we have really tried to make our use of texting as a two-way back and forth with our candidates and really use as an engagement tool. And I think that has been very successful for us from an etiquette perspective. We start off where, hey, it's, hi, Eric, this is Jared from CDW. I got your application, right? We are trying to be very clear to our candidates what is going on initially, and then as it continues to move through our process, naturally we become more and more conversational. How does a text message flow? How does a candidate speak with a recruiter? You don't every time you have a conversation back and forth, dear Jared, or signed Jared, right? The conversation flows as it would naturally, and that's how we invite our recruiters to as well. One thing I will say is we've been very adamant about our recruiters not using text lingo or text slang, because that just doesn't speak to the employer brand that we want to represent at CDW.
Okay. What are some of the major don'ts that you would recommend? I mean, so not everyone on the call is going to be able to go out and get a texting platform. And I know even at a smaller company, I would certainly recommend some form of a process behind your texting integration into your recruiting process. I prefer a platform, but others may not have that ability, so they just use their phone. Obviously, tracking is going to be different, things like that. There's some other extensions out there and tools that may or may not work. I'm not too familiar with those. If they're on their own, because we're getting a lot of questions like this, if they're on their own and they're just using their phone and not a platform, what are some of the don'ts that you would recommend that they should consider now?
Yeah. So the first thing is be sensitive to the times that you're texting your candidates. When there's not a system behind it, not a platform, you can't put restrictions on, hey, we do not want to text candidates between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. Right? Whereas with Text Recruit and a texting platform, you can put restrictions around those types of things, right? And so I think that's been kind of one of the biggest eye openers, right? I will tell you, we have recruiters who might be in the recruiting process and updating things in Taleo, in the evening, right? They might be trying to catch up on their email, and the last thing you want is a correspondence or something to be sent to a candidate at 1 a.m. And so I would just encourage you all to be very mindful of your process and what does that look like to your potential employer brand, right? If a recruiter is working at 1 a.m., what does that show like to the candidate?
Yeah. Okay, good. So I think we've got as many questions in as we can without going too deep into the conversation. So, Jarrett, thank you so much for jumping on, and for everyone that's still on the call. We didn't get to everybody's question. However, we have a few things we're going to be sending you. Make sure you check your inbox. In the next couple of hours, we're going to send you, of course, the slide deck for today, so you have that. We will send you a link to the recording. If you haven't gotten it already, there is a text recruiting checklist primer there that you can follow along, whether you're enterprise or standalone or a small agency or a small company. So make sure you check those out. And then we're going to send some links over. There is some opportunity to do trials or demos of Text Recruit, so we will send those over so you can take a peek at those. When you get that link, if you want to, go ahead and click through, sign up for that demo, and we'll make sure that we get that over to the team there. So, Jarrett, thank you so much for jumping on. I know it is your day off, so we truly appreciate that. I'm sure everyone here on the call does as well. So thank you, everybody, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you.